I've just uncovered the automotive industry's best-kept secret. There's a hidden list of 13 vehicles that modern manufacturers obsessively study, but can never quite match. They're legendary machines capable of exceeding 500,000 kilometers without major repairs and still running like new. And now I'll reveal these 13 tanks on wheels that can last a lifetime. And one of them could be the loyal companion that will never let you down. 13. Toyota Corolla, late 90s to roughly 2008. The Corolla from that era is no frills, the Swiss Army knife of cars, simple, reliable, and cheap to keep running. Why do they last so long? Because they aren't flogged to death. Small engines with gentle power delivery, generous tolerances that forgive a couple of missed oil services, and almost token electronics that don't force you into the dealer every time a sensor chirps. The gearbox is usually an honest component, manuals that hold up for years, and simple automatics if fluids were changed. And with a minimum of care, on-time oil, clean filters, belt, chassis tensioner checks, the whole drivetrain repays you with trouble-free miles. When you're buying, don't be fooled by shiny paint. Pop the hood, ask for books or invoices, and sniff around for old oil. Valve clatter on start, blue smoke on acceleration, or noticeable oil consumption are clear signs someone skipped maintenance. Check the exhaust. A heavily rusted system often means the engine ran hot or the car lived in salty environments. Prolonged heat corrodes and cracks pipes and manifolds. And what looks cheap now can turn into a big job later. Inspect the underbody and wheel wells with a flashlight. Rust down there turns a budget plan into a full rebuild. Don't forget the suspension. Clunks over bumps and uneven tire wear usually point to poor alignment or worn bushings. The real advantage is the ecosystem. Parts everywhere and prices that don't make you wince. From water pumps to sensors and alternators, you can find everything at breakers or parts stores. Independent shops know these engines well and labor rates are reasonable. What to expect if you buy one in good shape? A car that will ferry you for years with predictable running costs. Oil, filters, pads, belts, and occasional suspension work. What to avoid? A history of neglect, poorly repaired accident damage, or owners who admit, "I haven't touched it in years." Those are the ones that end up in the regret column. Before we continue, let me tell you this. This is the channel car dealerships don't want you to watch, because here we show things exactly as they are. No filters, no sugarcoating. Subscribe and leave a like if you don't want to be sold smoke and mirrors, and make sure your next car isn't a cleverly disguised disappointment. 12. Lexus LS 400, 1990s. Now we step up a level. The LS 400 is luxury with durability in its DNA. Toyota poured serious resources into this model to shut up Mercedes and BMW, and they succeeded. Top-tier materials, careful assembly, and a V8 tuned for smoothness and longevity, not for headline horsepower. That translates into a car that, when respected, gives you luxury car miles without surprises. But be warned, luxury plus neglect is a bad mix. Electrical systems and comfort gizmos age, and when they fail, repairs on a premium model can get expensive. When buying an LS 400, focus on three things: maintenance history, invoices, work done at a reputable shop, oil condition and engine compression, and the condition of the luxury systems: climate control, power seats, possible air suspension. A V8 with even compression readings, no smoke on acceleration, and oil that doesn't contain weird particles is a great start. The automatic gearbox should have been serviced at sensible intervals. A cabin that sounds solid and free of odd rattles usually signals the chassis and mounts are in decent shape. Old electronics fail. Climate actuators and interior control units wear out, but they're replaceable. What ruins a purchase is a car with a history of cheap electrical fixes, because that's where recurring headaches live. Maintenance costs for the LS aren't Corolla level, but it's not a black hole either if you pick carefully. Replacement parts exist, and specialists will restore systems without charging the official dealer rates. If you want a luxury car that won't fall apart with age, and you accept some preventive maintenance costs, the LS 400 will deliver refined comfort with few nasty surprises, provided you don't buy a neglected example. 11. Toyota Land Cruiser 100, 1998-2007. The Land Cruiser 100 is a different breed, built to smash into the worst conditions and come back whole. If your plan is towing water crossings, sleeping in remote camps, or trusting roads that don't exist on maps, this platform was designed for that life. The V8s in this generation are big, with generous bearings and components meant for strength, not lightness. The chassis and layout allow field repairs with basic tools, and that fact saves vehicles in places where the dealer is 3 days away. But pay attention. What kills many 100s isn't the engine. It's the lack of follow-up service after hard use. Differentials with water inside, transfer cases full of mud, and seals dried out because oil wasn't changed are common sins. If you buy one that came from hard work, expeditions, beach driving, agriculture, demand maintenance records or be prepared to pull apart and inspect differentials, transfer case and the entire cooling system, radiator, intercooler, hoses, and thermostat. Water ingress into electrical systems and fuse boxes can strand a car for seemingly trivial reasons. With attention, those can be fixed quickly. Without it, they cascade into more trouble. Check engine mounts and anchoring points. Severe impacts or bad towing jobs leave marks. Also inspect chassis alignment and look for strange welds. In regions where Land Cruisers are workhorses, some owners patch things with improvised welds that wreck geometry and safety. Finally, think about running costs. These are thirsty vehicles and major parts can get expensive when something big needs attention. But if you choose an example with an honest history and without prolonged immersion in water, you get a tool that, properly cared for, can last a lifetime and then some. 10. Toyota 4Runner, 90s, early 2000s. The 4Runner from those years is basically the civilian version of a tool truck. Many variants share chassis with pickups, engines that don't reinvent the wheel but keep it turning, and electronics so limited that if the battery dies, you don't need a diagnostic lab to get back on the road. That means you'll see them loaded on roof racks, towing trailers, and owned by people who put them to work until something breaks. The good part is most breakages are quick and cheap to fix, and the vehicle comes back to life. In daily use, you'll notice the body and interior age like a working truck. Hard plastics, seats that show wear but hold up, and an overall built-to-last feel. Real problems are, first, rust in critical frame spots and suspension mount points. If it lived in a salt area, get under it with a torch. Second, seals on the transfer case and differentials drying out from lack of service, and eventually leaking fluid until the driveline runs poorly lubricated. Third, the rear suspension, when used for towing or constant heavy loads, springs, shocks, and bushings demand attention and manifest as body roll, noises, and uneven tire wear. Another killer for gearboxes and diffs is the habit of towing heavy loads without changing fluids on schedule. Heat and heavy-duty wear strip lubricants of their protective properties, and failures that could have been prevented appear. When buying, request towing history and records of transmission or transfer service. If the seller doesn't have them, assume you'll need internal inspection or to price the risk into the deal. If possible, do a test drive with a trailer and listen for transmission noises and odd vibrations. Check body rails, weld points, and engine mounts. Past impacts leave traces that polishing won't hide. 9. Toyota Sequoia 2008-2012. The Sequoia doesn't pretend to be anything it's not. It's a giant SUV with the heart of a truck. Big engine, reinforced chassis, and towing capacity that makes many pickups sit up and take notice. If you're hauling a travel trailer, a boat, or doing heavy work, the Sequoia was built for that job. But built for it is not the same as indestructible without maintenance. The repeated mistake buyers make is assuming that because it's a Toyota, it doesn't need special care. Heavy towing demands more frequent transmission fluid changes, inspections of the torque converter, and extra attention to cooling systems. Skip those services and you'll be facing seized converters, worn internal pump parts, or overheating that quickly balloons repair bills. When you go look at one, check the chassis for twist and deformation in the rear end. Many Sequoias show the trailer hitch as the protagonist of home repairs and welds that alter rigidity and geometry. Inspect rotors, drums, suspension mounts, and the rear differential. Years of heavy towing will show up in fatigue components. Look for commercial use signs, sticker residue, drilled mounting points, cargo racks, because these reduce the useful life even if the exterior looks well kept. Conversely, if the service history includes regular transmission work, consistent oil changes, brake overhauls, and suspension checks, you're looking at a machine that will swallow seasons of abuse without drama. One practical truth: fuel and upkeep cost money. A well-kept Sequoia isn't cheap to feed or to maintain wear items on, but compared with premium European SUVs, the repair bills are more predictable and parts easier to find on the street. If you buy used, budget for preventive correction. Replace old transmission seals and gaskets, change fluids with proper thermal treatment, and inspect frame mounts and hitch anchorage. 8. Lexus GX460 2010. The GX460 is the luxury SUV that decided to keep things practical. It skips fragile gimmicks and offers leather, wood trim, and a ladder-type chassis borrowed from work-grade platforms. Technically, it's a Tundra dressed for the executive suite. The engine comes from platforms designed for rigid frames and heavy drivetrains, so the GX's heart isn't delicate, it's predictable. The real advantage is balance, comfort, sound insulation, and at the same time, an architecture that allows underside repairs. You don't need a boutique specialist for critical work, just a mechanic experienced with Toyota pickups. When shopping, demand records for transfer case service and automatic transmission maintenance, and verify the vehicle wasn't used exclusively for extreme towing. Many GX owners pamper their cars and keep them up to date. Others treat them like daily work trucks, and these will surface with front-end noises, axle vibration from misalignment, or sensor faults that, while annoying, rarely become catastrophic. Inspect the suspension, check for leaks at transmission and differential seals, and verify chassis stiffness. Big knocks from accidents or bad towing jobs leave marks and can turn a GX into a risky buy. If the car has a clear service history and maintenance is current, you get luxury that's not prone to breakdowns, comfortable driving, and critical system repairs that rely on robust, well-understood solutions. The uncomfortable truth is, GXs aren't cheap on consumables due to weight and size, but their mechanical reliability pays off with years of predictable service. For someone who wants leather and solidity without the electronic headaches of some European luxury SUVs, the GX460 blends the best of both worlds: refinement and hardiness. 7. Toyota RAV4, third generation, TAR 2006. The RAV4 of this generation is the kind of car that won't make your heart race at first glance, but it wins you over with common sense. It doesn't complain, it doesn't demand expensive rituals, it just gets the job done. Toyota built it with engines that breathe easy, transmissions that don't chase headline numbers, and a chassis designed to take the daily grind of city streets and highways. Look after it with the basics: timely oil, fresh filters, belt checks, and transmission inspections, and it will return years of reliable service. Reality for many buyers is that the transmission and the CV joints are the weak links. Owners who say it's a Toyota, it'll be fine, and stretch service intervals often end up with noises, shift hesitation, or vibrations from worn joints. Another watch point is rust in the subframe and weld points if the car comes from salt-use climates. The RAV4 ages poorly underneath if left exposed. When viewing a used unit, ask for oil change history and, above all, transmission maintenance records. Listen to the gearbox cold and hot, open it up on the highway in top gear, and check for jerks or odd noises. The big plus: parts are cheap and widely available. Any decent neighborhood mechanic can sort out a RAV4 without drama. For mixed city and highway use, it's a sensible bet. Comfortable, economical, and low cost to own, provided you stay on top of the basic maintenance. 6. Toyota Tundra, second generation, 2007 and 2013. The second-gen Tundra arrived to prove Toyota could play and win in the heavy pickup league. It's overbuilt in many areas: thick frame, stout axles, and engines designed for long life rather than headline power figures. In the hands of contractors and hard-working drivers, it performs and forgives the punishment. What you need to watch for isn't block strength, but wear from heavy use. Brakes, suspension components, and clutches are the items that will show the cost of a life spent towing and hauling. Buy carefully, demand evidence of transmission and differential servicing, evaluate frame condition, and look for aftermarket suspension work or hack jobs around the hitch area. Also inspect the underbody. Poor repairs after overloads leave marks that don't wash off. Fuel consumption is going to be high, and wear items have their cost. But compared to many rivals, the Tundra's repair bills are usually more predictable. If you want a pickup that will work hard and last years, and the example in front of you doesn't have a history of abuse without service, the Tundra is a buy that's meant to endure. Before revealing the top 5, here's a quick reminder. To stay informed about what dealerships might be hiding and to truly understand what you're buying, subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. We're dedicated to uncovering the secrets they'd rather you never discover. 5. Volvo 240, 740, 1990s. The Volvo 240 and 740 are the textbook definition of cars built to survive weather and time. Thick steel, simple engines, and construction aimed at easy repairs. These Volvos aren't fast or flashy, but in knowledgeable hands they are nearly immortal. Their enemy is rust. Where roads get salted or humidity is constant, many 240 740s ended up with eaten-through structures and repair bills that destroy the buy cheap dream. If you find one that's structurally sound, without corrosion in key areas, you've discovered a car that can be passed down through generations. Inspect front and rear suspension mounting points, anchorages, and the underside carefully. Any botched bodywork usually signals prior shoddy intervention. Mechanically, they're extremely straightforward. Water pumps, exhaust systems, and gaskets are the typical maintenance jobs, and they are cheap to fix. The parts market is steady, and there's a big aftermarket for these cars. Yes, they don't have a sensor for every function, and that's part of their charm, because it spares you weird electronic failures. And yes, if you keep them maintained, they'll serve for decades. Buy a clean one, and you get one of those rare machines that teach new drivers what real mechanics look like. No mystery, no proprietary software, just metal and know-how. 4. Jeep Cherokee XJ, 1987-2001. The XJ is the hammer of the automotive world. Simple, blunt, and effective. The 4.0-liter inline-six isn't a museum piece, it's a practical engine. Tolerant of rough use, built to forgive mistakes, and repairable by any village mechanic. That means when something goes wrong, the fix is usually straightforward and affordable. A seal, a head job, a water pump. Not a dealer-only wallet breaker. The other half of its appeal is the community. Manuals, forums, used parts, and repro components are everywhere. If you break down, odds are someone nearby has the part or the know-how to get you going again. That said, it's not invincible. Units that have passed through the hands of tuners, drift rigs, or sloppy repairers show problems that aren't in the manual. Badly welded structures, trimmed wheel arches without reinforcement, or hacked electrical installs that create nightmares. So when you inspect an XJ used, pay particular attention to the usual trouble spots. The frame rails, they rust or show patch repairs, spring hangers and suspension mounts that take the brunt of loads and flex, and the engine and transmission mounting points that reveal impacts or botched repairs. The radiator and thermostat are simple but vital. An XJ with a history of overheating often means fatigued head gaskets, and that raises the bill quickly. Listen for noises on start, check steering play, sniff for oil or coolant leaks, and look for signs of amateur repairs, dodgy welds, mismatched fasteners, or non-OEM mounts. If those checks pass and the vehicle hasn't suffered aggressive modifications, you'll own a field companion for decades. Take it to the beach, fix it with a wrench, and it keeps going. 3. Toyota Prius, second generation, 2004-2009. Putting a hybrid on a list of tough cars sounds odd to some, but the Prius earns its place in practice. The hybrid layout lightens the load on the combustion engine, and many parts simply see less stress. Regenerative braking extends brake life. The CVT, when maintained, has proven tougher than the scare stories suggest, and batteries with reasonable care last far longer than most people expect. In short, the Prius's design doesn't only save fuel, it spreads the work across systems, and if that balance is maintained, you get miles with fewer big mechanical interventions than you'd expect from a comparable conventional car. The real risks are practical, not mystical. Power electronics, inverters, modules, and hybrid components can be more expensive than a timing belt. But today, parts and workshop experience have brought those costs down compared to the early days of hybrids. Before buying, request the hybrid system's service history and check whether the battery was tested or refurbished. Inspect electrical service records, stored error codes, work on the traction motor, and any repeated power loss events. On a test drive, pay attention to the smoothness of transitions between electric and gasoline power, odd noises from the upper drivetrain, and actual fuel consumption. Abnormally low readings can suggest sensor issues. Another real-world point. Many Priuses arrive at shops with minor collision damage that affects sensors or battery electronics. That's not the same as a ruined engine, but it can add unexpected cost. With a clean history and sensible checks, a Prius is a smart buy. It saves fuel, reduces thermal load on the engine, and, when treated right, will reward you with long, efficient life. 2. Honda Fit Jazz 2002-2008. The Fit Jazz is small but built with plain, industrial common sense. A tough little engine, straightforward gearboxes, and an interior layout that squeezes maximum space out of a tiny footprint without adding needless complexity. That makes it almost the perfect city car. It sips fuel, costs very little to keep on the road, and rarely surprises you with a catastrophic failure. The manual transmissions feel like they were made to last. The automatics and CVTs in some versions, when properly maintained, behave just as reliably. You can park one on a crowded street, hammer it over potholes and cobblestones, and still drive it for years without the repair bills piling up. What does fail is ordinary wear and tear, not grand engineering disasters. Suspension creaks from constant city traffic, body scratches from close parking, or clogged injectors when someone skimped on fuel and filter maintenance. A key detail to watch is the fuel injection system and the timing drive setup, belt or chain depending on the version. If the fuel filter or injection maintenance gets ignored, you can end up with poor performance and fuel consumption that kills the whole point of owning a Fit. The good news is those jobs are cheap and simple. Clutch kits, shocks, brake pads and discs, filters and injector cleanings. Nothing that requires an expensive dealer session or mysterious diagnostics. Buy a cared-for Fit, and you get a car that asks for nothing more than basic attention and rewards you with a surprising amount of interior room for its size. A real advantage if you live in the city, but occasionally need to carry 3 people or a pile of cargo. Before we reveal number 1, take note. This is what dealerships don't always tell you. No fluff, no softening. The raw reality of cars that became legends and cars that turned into headaches. If you want more unfiltered content like this, give it a like, subscribe and share so more people know which cars are worth keeping and which to avoid at all costs. 1. Toyota Avalon 2000, the undisputed king. If I had to put my hand on the table and bet on a car you can buy once and forget for years, the early 2000s Avalon is my pick. It's the purest expression of Toyota's approach to comfort and durability. A V6 that breathes easy, transmissions tuned for smoothness rather than aggression, and a platform set up to eat miles without drama. These Avalons behave like high-mileage cars that don't complain. The cabin ages gracefully, the suspension keeps its composure, and where items show up on predictable schedules at reasonable costs. Practically speaking, that means fewer nasty surprises and far more controllable bills over time. Before you sign anything, check usage history carefully. Towing, taxi use, or fleet duty leaves distinct marks and drastically change the true cost of ownership. Inspect cylinder compression, oil consumption, the condition of the automatic gearbox, and listen for transmission noises. A well-kept Avalon will show even compression numbers, clean oil and buttery smooth shifts. Also look for signs of chassis abuse, major impacts, perimeter repairs, or welds where there shouldn't be any. The Avalon's real treasure is predictability. You know roughly what will need replacing and when, and parts are widely available. If the example you find has no big accidents, has up-to-date maintenance, and shows no signs of abuse, you're buying the promise of buy once, forget in every practical sense. Comfort, reliability, and a low long-term ownership cost. It's not a corner carver, and it doesn't pretend to be one. It's the machine for people who travel, haul, and live without wanting mechanical surprises. Practical tips, short summary. Ask for maintenance history and check real service intervals. Insist on invoices, stamps, receipts, or photos of work. A stamped service book helps, but invoices show what was actually done, with which parts and when. If there's no history, demand a price cut to cover a full inspection or walk away. Buying without records is a gamble. Inspect the underbody and frame closely. Rust starts small, suspension mounts, frame joints, wheel arches, and becomes a structural problem. Look for mismatched paint, filler seams or fresh bolts. Lift carpets, check seat mounts, and body-to-chassis joints. Estimate repair cost for corrosion and avoid buys where the underside is heavy. If the vehicle towed or saw off-road use, get gearbox and differential service records. Towing heats drivetrains and ages fluids and seals faster. Dark, contaminated lubricant or metal and oil means the units should be open. Cars with deep water fording or mud duty raise the risk. Checking seals and last service dates is cheap insurance. Don't trust looks. New paint can hide frame damage. Check panel gaps, color differences, and odd drill holes. Put the car on a lift and inspect the chassis. Bad straightening or dozens of welds mean hidden collisions and future headaches. If they refuse a thorough check, walk away. Prefer mechanical simplicity if you want low ownership costs. Older cars with fewer sensors are cheaper to fix at a local shop. Modern cars with many interconnected modules often need dealer diagnostics and pricey parts. If your budget is limited, prioritize simple, proven mechanics over unnecessary electronic gadgets. Now that you know about these 13 indestructible cars, I'd like to know, have you ever had any experience with any of them? Or if you had to choose just one, which would it be? We'd love to hear your opinion, as your comments could help many others. But there's something that can help us all. Watch the video I'm sharing on the screen, because it could save us a lot of money, time, and headaches in the future. But before you do, don't forget to subscribe and like the video, because otherwise we might not